So many eyeshadow palettes, you guys. I've needed to declutter for quite a while, so that is what we're going to be doing today. I'm hoping I can declutter at least half of what I have here, and if I can't do half, then hopefully maybe a third of what I have, maybe. We'll see. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here and you didn't already, my name is Tara and thank you so much for being here. And don't forget, if you like my vibe, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to hit the notification bell down below so you don't miss on any of my new uploads. So today, you guys, it is a eyeshadow palette declutter time. I need to declutter these eyeshadow palettes right here next to me. You guys will see I have way too many eyeshadow palettes right now and it's kind of overwhelming. I realized, I think about a year and a half ago, that even though I make some beauty content here on this channel, I don't like having a super large collection. It overwhelms me. I never know what I want to use. Like, makeup fatigue is definitely a thing. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm probably not going to swatch every single eyeshadow palette. My goal today is to get rid of at least half of the eyeshadow palettes that I have. Hoping, fingers crossed, that I can do it. I will be talking about each palette, pros and cons of each palette, why I'm getting rid of it, all that fun stuff that you usually see in a declutter. I'm going to stop rambling and we're just going to jump right into it. If you hear a huge storm going, it's because there is a huge storm going. And also, don't mind my nails. They're disgusting because they're dyed green from my hair. I guess we'll start off with this palette. This is the Desi Katie Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. Funny story about this palette. I actually bought this palette, decluttered it, and then rebought it because it was on sale at Ulta for like $23 or something, and then I used my points and it was only like $4. I really liked this palette when I first bought it. I thought I had an allergic reaction to the shimmers in here. They're so pretty, you guys. I really like that it's very neutral, like the mattes are really neutral in here, but these shimmers are just so stunning. I used this palette the other day, like yesterday, and I didn't have a bad reaction, so I am going to hold on to this. Next palette is the e.l.f. Jkissa Round 1 palette. This is actually a pretty decent palette. The camera's not picking it up, but this is like a really pretty shimmer. I really like a lot of the shades in here. The purples in here are not the best, to be honest with you. I actually might declutter this. Even though I really like jkissa and I do like a lot of the shades in here, I just don't use it that often. The packaging is super cute and everything. I like how small it is, but I just don't use it. So I think I'm going to declutter it. I have this little bite-sized e.l.f. palette that I just barely picked up. These are only $3. This is so good. The only shade I had a problem with is this matte right here. It just like blended to nothing, but these shimmers are really pretty and pigmented, and this green right here is really nice as well. So I am going to hold on to this, and for $3, this is so bomb. Let's tap into some Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes, shall we? I have quite a few here, and I also have one more that I'm going to talk about too. You all probably know this palette, Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance. This is a really good palette. Quality of these shadows are really great. This palette is so old though, I'm not gonna lie. This was like one of my first high-end palettes I ever bought for myself, and I have a lot of good memories. You can see that I've definitely got my use out of it, but I just never use it, you guys. Oh, I don't know. I used to feel like I had to have every Anastasia palette and I collected them. Look, the packaging gets so gross too. But now I've come to terms with the fact that I don't need every single Anastasia palette just to have it. So I'm going to put this in the maybe pile and we'll revisit this because I have a lot of similar tones and other eyeshadow palettes. Next up, we have the Anastasia Beverly Hills Norvina palette. Oh, you guys, I don't even want to open this. Look at how destroyed this is. So if you guys saw my all about my eyeshadow palettes, it was a tag video that was going around that I did. My kids got into this palette. I actually have a friend who wants this palette that I'm going to send to them. I'm going to clean this up a little bit and send it off to them because you can still get a lot of use out of these mattes in here, and these shimmers you can still get use out of. there's still a lot of product here. I just personally never reached for it even before my kids got into it. The shimmers in here are really pretty. The mattes in here are in. This Soul color right here literally makes you look like you have a black eye. It's not cute. If you take out this purple and pink, the other mattes are just like the same mattes you get in every Anastasia palette. And I mean, it is what it is. So definitely decluttering her. Also, another one I know I'm going to declutter is the Riviera palette. It's another one that my kids got into. But again, if this is cleaned up, you can still get a lot of use out of it. The shimmers are really beautiful in this palette. These neon colors, I wasn't super impressed with. But again, if you take out these pops of color, it's basically a standard ABH palette, and I just never used it even before my kids got into it. So decluttering her. ABH Soft Glam palette. This is a very beautiful palette. I use this when I do other people's makeup a lot, to be honest with you. You can see I've definitely gotten my use out of it. But I honestly have other neutral palettes that you guys will see that I just use more, so I think I'm going to declutter this. This one is newer to me. This is the Anastasia Jaclyn palette. I love the packaging on here. I love that they didn't do the velvet with this, and it's more of like a fox snake skin or leopard skin, or not leopard skin, alligator skin. When I saw this palette, I was so drawn to it. Like, the colors in here are literally everything. This red and purple scream to me, and they are really pretty. The shimmers are really pretty in here. I was not super impressed with this palette. So many people love this palette, but for me, it just wasn't my jam. And I did get it on a discount, and I was super excited when I got it on a discount, but I just don't use it, so I'm going to declutter it. Wow, I'm so proud of myself for decluttering all of those. This is another newer purchase for me. I did a video testing this palette out. This is the ABH Norvina Collection Volume 4 palette. This is what she looks like, and I really bought this palette because I thought it would be a good replacement for the Riviera and Norvina palette that my kids destroyed, and I figured I would get all the same tones in those two palettes, but in one palette. I didn't like this palette when I tested it out in my video, and I've used it 1 or 2 times since then, and I don't like it. This green, which you would think would be beautiful, I don't like. The pinks and stuff really aren't great. The pressed glitters in here are awful, and I just was not impressed with this quality at all, so I'm going to declutter this. Next up, we have the Sugar Pill Fun Size palette. I love this palette. It is so good. This is an all matte colorful eyeshadow palette. I love the tones in here. Baby hands, and it's literally like the size of my hand. I love it. Super great for travel. I love just taking one of these shades and blending it into my inner corner. That's it, calling it a day. Or taking one of these shades and blending it all over my eyelid and my crease and doing really fun one eyeshadow eye looks. Super cute palette. Love the colors in here. They're so unique, so different, and I live for it, so I'm definitely keeping this. I have the Colored Raine Berry Cute palette. I don't even know if they make these anymore. I don't like this. When I picked this up, I really was intrigued by the color story, especially these shimmers. I love Colored Raine eyeshadows so much, and like, it's pretty and whatever, but I'm just not like super drawn to cool tones like this cool tone gray brown color. The mattes do blend out really well. The shimmers are really pretty. I just never use it, and I'm just like kind of not inspired by this color story, so I'm gonna pass it on. The packaging is so cute though. And then we have another Colored Raine mini palette. This is the Lovelies palette, and I love this color story, but I've tried to make this work so many times, and it just doesn't look right on me. I don't know if it's just that cool tones aren't my jam. I don't know what it is. This blue is so good though. It's so pigmented. It blends out so well. It's literally everything. These two shimmers right here are so nice as well. But it just, I don't know. There's just something about it. It doesn't work for me. It's not that the quality is bad or anything, I just don't look good in it, so I'm gonna pass it on. Another colored Raine palette that I have is the OG Queen of Hearts palette, you guys. This is where I was saying before, where I know I have similar tones to the Modern Renaissance, so I don't feel like I need more than one. And in my opinion, if I had to choose between Modern Renaissance or Queen of Hearts by Colored Raine, hands down, it would be the Queen of Hearts palette by Colored Raine. The quality is just so much better. It's so beginner friendly. Shadows are so pigmented. They blend effortlessly and they blend so much better than the ABH shadows. There's not as much kickback, so you're not wasting as much product. The shimmers are way better in this palette, in my opinion, than the ABH palette. So I think I'm going to declutter the Modern Renaissance and keep the Colored Raine palette. Oh my gosh, you guys, so far we have kept 4 and we've decluttered 9. I'm so proud of myself. Get it, kid. Next up, we just have this little mini 4-pan palette from Midas Cosmetics. This is the matcha, I want to say matcha tea, green tea macchiato palette. This is just a really basic 4-pan palette, but I love it. These are right up my alley. This makes the most beautiful grungy looks. You can take this on travel and still create like these really basic everyday wearable looks. The shimmer is so beautiful. I really love this palette so much. It's a very great palette to turn a day look into a night look. Love this. The quality is so great. They blend beautifully. Definitely keeping this. Next up, we have the Midas Cosmetics Smoky Glow Collab Palette. I also did a video on this palette as well. I have used this palette since I filmed that video. Any palettes that I talk about where I've done videos using them, I will link them in the description box for you guys if you're interested. But some of these shadows are really beautiful. Leno, Group Date, Warrior. Beautiful. I mean, look at that. Look at that pigment. The only issue I have with this palette is that no matter what shadows you use in here, because of the color story, they tend to kind of all look the same. Other than that, they blend out really well. The shimmers are kind of hit and miss for me, but I think they're different formulas, and that is why. I do want to hold on to this though, because I do really enjoy it and I want to use it some more because there are shades in here that I have not used yet. I do like that you get all those vibrant rosy tones plus these really great neutral tones in here. So really great for those pops of color, but if you want just like a neutral look, you can also pull that off with here. Plus, like, some of these shimmers are just out of this world. Next up, we have the Kaleidos Futurism Neon palette. I actually have not used this palette yet. This is a new palette to me, so I am going to hold on to this. I'm super excited to play with it, though, because I really liked the other palette I picked up from them, which I will talk about in a second. I also have the Escape Pod palette from Kaleidos. I did a whole video testing this out. I will link it below. This is just so amazing. The pastels in here not only blend beautifully, but they have pigment. They're buildable. I love that you get all these bright tones, but you also get your neutrals. The shimmers in here, you guys, or metallics or whatever you want to call them, they're so good. Like I said, I love purples and greens. This palette is a dream for me. The neons in here blend so well. They pack a punch. Definitely recommend Kaleidos if you have not tried them already. They're so freaking good. Let's get into some Jeffree Star, shall we? If you guys didn't see my Jeffree Star I'm Done video, I will link that down below, but I already know I'm decluttering all of my Jeffree Star palettes, but I do want to talk about them with you guys. So this is the Conspiracy palette. I did do a whole video on this palette. I did not like this palette. I know a lot of people did like this palette, but even before Shane and Jeffree were canceled, I was very vocal about not liking this palette, not thinking that it would work for several skin tones. Food Vibes is awful, dusty, gross. The shimmers in here are so thick and chunky. Like, they're pretty, but they're like, they're chunky. What's the tea blends to nothing. I mean, I think the only shade in here that I really like is Diet Cola. to be honest with you. And I don't feel like people of color can use like most of this palette. Not a Fact is really pretty, but like, yeah. And I've used this palette maybe 3 times and it looks like I've gone to town on it. That's how just dusty and crumbly these shades are. This is like the worst black I've ever used in my life. It's just not a good palette. I don't like it. Don't recommend it at all. Like I said, I felt that way even before Shane Dawson and Jeffree were canceled. So I'm decluttering this. Next up, we have Blood Sugar. Again, I have a whole video on this palette. When this first released, everybody was all about it. I even fell into the hype of it. I mean, it's cute. All of your eye looks will look exactly the same no matter what shades you use because of the color story. That's why I decluttered Blue Blood, is because like I had no use for a huge palette with all blues and it all looked the same no matter what. So it's the same thing with this. The mattes do blend really nicely. The shimmer quality in here, in my opinion, is a little bit better than Conspiracy, but it's just not that great. It's not what it's hyped up to be, in my opinion. I just think people fell for it because it was all red. Jeffree was smart. He took the warm tone trend and ran with it and kind of, you know, made this. But I just, even if I wasn't done with Jeffree Star, I probably would be decluttering this. All right, now onto a Jeffree Star palette that I do thoroughly love, and it's really sad for me to have to declutter it, but I'm choosing to declutter it because I don't want to support Jeffree Star anymore. And I know somebody will get a lot of use out of this and love this. This is the Jawbreaker palette. This is my favorite Jeffree Star palette that he's ever done, and I've owned every single one of his palettes. I've decluttered a lot of them. These are the only 3 left in my collection from him. All of the pastels in here blend beautifully. They build beautifully. Cute is the only one where it's like meh, but other than that, they're all beautiful. The shimmers in here are like the perfect amount of soft, beautiful, lovely, but not chunky. I know a lot of people don't like this color story, but I live for it. It's beautiful. It was really hard for me to decide to declutter this palette because I think this is a palette that I've gotten so much use out of, even though you can hardly tell I've gotten use out of it. I've used this thing to filth, and it is a really great palette, and I hope somebody gets a lot of use out of it and loves it just as much as I did. We have the Laura Lee Los Angeles Nudie Patootie palette. This is a really great palette in my opinion. The shimmers in here are so nice, beautiful. The mattes blend beautifully. This used to be my go-to everyday eyeshadow look palette, but I honestly don't use it anymore, and I feel like there are people that could use it and get a lot of use out of it instead of it just sitting in my collection. So I'm going to declutter it, but I do think that if you like neutral eyeshadows and you're in the market for an eyeshadow palette that is all neutral, you would really like this. It's just not something that I use all the time, so I'm gonna declutter her. Next up, we have the Juvia's Place Festival palette. I used to own almost every Juvia's Place palette, but I decluttered a lot of them. This is the last one that I own from them. They have released a few more since I've bought from them, like since I've bought any new makeup from them. This is a really great palette. I love the color story to this palette. I get some really beautiful looks. This like metallic black is the main reason why I held on to it. And I want to show you guys something really quickly. I feel like you can get very similar looks with both palettes, but this palette from Juvia's Place caters more to everybody, whereas this palette from Jeffree Star doesn't. So if you really liked the color story of Conspiracy, but you A, don't want to support Jeffree Star, B, didn't think half the palette would work for you, check out the Festival palette from Juvia's Place, because to me, I feel like there's just so many similar shades in here and you can create very similar looks. And the quality of Juvia's Place's shadows to me is way better than Jeffree Star's shadows. Mattes are so beautiful in this palette. They blend out beautifully. The shimmers are amazing. Again, I love the color story in this palette. and I'm definitely going to keep this. Plus, Juvia's Place is so affordable. Next up, we have this palette from Laura Sanchez called Moods. I received this in an Ipsy Plus box, and I actually really like it. You get 2 highlighters, and then you get a row of mattes and a row of shimmers. The highlighters are really pretty. You get like this duochrome highlighter, and then you just get like this basic highlighter. Super pretty though. The mattes blend so beautifully. The shimmers are really, really nice. I love this purple right here. Oh, so pretty. They're not like the most metallic-y shimmers, but they get the job done. And I had never heard of Laura Sanchez before receiving this palette in my Ipsy. I did get a decent amount of use from it, and I did like it. I do like it. I just honestly never use it. I don't know if I never use it because I'm so overwhelmed with all the palettes I have or what. Packaging literally is life, dude. So cute, right? I just don't use it, and I feel like my niece would get a lot more use out of this, so I'm gonna actually give this to her. Next up, we have the Beauty Bakerie Proof in the Pudding eyeshadow palette. Again, cute packaging. I love Beauty Bakerie's whole like aesthetic and theme. It's so cute. This is just like your basic neutral everyday wearable palette. The mattes blend so well in this palette. The shimmers are really nice. I am more of a color person. I don't really wear neutral eyeshadows that often. I'm like the opposite of what most people are. And even though I've used this palette and I like it, I just feel like I don't reach for it enough. And I feel like there are people out there that could really love and appreciate this palette. So I am going to pass it on. Next up is the Self Love palette from Midas Cosmetics. I love the color story. My black got damaged in transit, so it's a little hot mess right now. The shimmers in here are, I mean, look at that. They're so beautiful. The mattes are beautiful. They blend really nicely, super pigmented. I really love this eyeshadow palette. I've used it a few times, always been super impressed with the looks that I get. I will say this black is more of like a buildable black. It's not like that gives you a lot of punch type of black, if you know what I'm saying, but it's still really nice. It blends out really nice. And I love supporting a really small indie brand, and I have followed her for so long on Instagram, and she's always been super supportive of me. I'm definitely going to hold on to this. This is the Melt Cosmetics Smoke Sessions palette. This is another palette like the Dose of Colors one where I bought it when it released, decluttered it, and then rebought it, and I regret rebuying it. I don't know why, but when I look at this palette, it gives me mermaid vibes, not weed vibes, if that makes sense. Let me know in the comments down below if you understand what I'm trying to say. I don't know if it's because of these shades over here, but you guys see, just from me swatching these, they're so crumbly. I don't know what the rave is about this. I mean, I got conned into buying it twice. I want to love this, and I don't understand why I don't love this, but I don't. Every time I try to use these mattes, it's not even that, I mean, they're pigmented, but I can't blend them for shit. I've tried the packing technique with the mattes. That doesn't work. It just falls all over my face. It's so patchy. The shimmers are just so delicate, and they fall all over my face. They don't want to stick. I've tried glitter glue. I've noticed with Melt's formula too, it's very inconsistent. I was suckered back into buying this palette because I saw people doing these amazing looks with this side of the palette, and I really do love these 3 shades so freaking much, but they just don't perform the way I want them to. I mean, do you guys see? So crumbly, so freaking crumbly. I'm going to declutter this, and hopefully somebody will get better use out of it than I did. All right, another eyeshadow palette from Melt is the 420 palette that they released this year. I love the shatter all over the packaging. I did a whole video on this palette as well. See, when I open this palette, I get weed themes. This palette screams weed theme to me. Now, it's weird because with this palette, it's all mattes and only one shimmer, whereas with most Melt palettes, it's usually all shimmers and just 1 or 2 mattes. I do not like the shimmer in here. It feels like it already has hard pan. I mean, look at that. It's like literally nothing. I love the mattes in here. Unlike the Smoke Sessions palette, The mattes in here blend so well. I've used this a few times since the video I did of this, and I really, really thoroughly enjoy it. I love the looks that I create with this, and it doesn't bother me that the one shimmer in here isn't the greatest, because I have so many eyeshadow palettes and liquid eyeshadows and pressed glitters and pressed pigments that I can throw on to my lid if I want that little extra oomph, you know? Definitely going to hold on to this. Plus, again, this packaging, hello. Next up, we have the Lunar Beauty Lice a Drag palette. This was Lunar Beauty's first release that they did. Created some beautiful eye looks with here. I actually really like that you only get 2 shimmers and they're super basic. You get like a rose gold and then like a bronze. I feel like this rose gold has gotten some hard pan. Doesn't that look weird in the pan? Anybody else see that? Is that just me? And then look at the black. The black looks weird too. It's like so gritty. I mean, it is a pigmented black, y'all. I just have eyeshadow all over my dress right now from swatching and just wiping my fingers on my dress. Natural shadows aren't the worst, but they're not the greatest. But the colorful shadows in here shine. They're beautiful. Love them. The shimmers, beautiful. Love them. So I'm definitely holding on to this. I love Lunar Beauty. I love their quality. I think they're a great brand, and I don't understand why they don't get more hype because they're just so good. Keeping up with the Lunar Beauty theme, this is the Lunar Beauty Moon Spell palette. I did a whole video on this palette. I think I did a whole video on the Life's a Drag palette too. If I did, I'll link it down below. As I said earlier, I love greens and purples, and this palette does it for me, you guys. The shimmers in here, metallics, whatever you want to call them, are literally so stunning, so beautiful. I mean, look at that. Look at that. So beautiful. I use this all the time. I've almost hit pan on Samantha because this is just such a good palette. The neutrals in here are absolutely beautiful. The neutrals in here are way better than the Life's a Drag palette. The greens in here are so pretty. This shade Nancy, oh my goodness, look at that. The pigment, so good. Blends, so good. There's nothing bad I have to say about this palette. It's just so good. And the packaging is literally everything. Of course, it's disgusting though. My kids like to get in my makeup, so I just gave up on trying to keep everything clean and beautiful. But I'm definitely keeping this. It's so good. 6 palettes left to go, you guys. This is the only Colourpop palette that I still own. I used to own so many, but I honestly am not the biggest fan of Colourpop shadows. But the So Jaded palette that they did with Kathleen Lights, love the packaging. This palette is so good, you guys. The pressed glitters in here are actually really nice. I was thoroughly impressed with them. And they last on, there's like a hair. They last on the eyes all day long, even without a glitter glue. This Super Shock shadow they put in here, Diamond, is so, I mean, look at that. So wet, so beautiful. I love it. The mattes in here blend beautifully, which I never really had an issue with Colourpop's mattes. I more or less had issues with their shimmers, but to me, they stepped it up with this palette. Of course, the train's gonna go by right now. So nice. I mean, you know, it's affordable, so I don't expect like the greatest quality. But in my opinion, this is my favorite Colourpop palette that I've ever tried. And I've owned all of Kathleen Lights' collabs with them. I wasn't the biggest fan of them, but this one is so good. I'm going to hold on to it. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of huge eyeshadow palettes, it's just so good. I have to keep it. This is the Jaclyn Hill palette, the original Jaclyn Hill palette that she did with Morphe. This is the original formula. They have since changed the formula, so it's not vegan anymore, but this is the original vegan formula. I bought this when it originally dropped. I still stand by this palette, this version. I don't know how the new version is, but I still stand by this version of this palette being amazing. I've created some amazing looks with this palette. I do feel like there's a lot of repeats that didn't need to be in here. Overall, for a Morphe palette, it is really, really great. I did buy her Volt collection. I didn't like that. I decluttered all of them. But This I've held on to because it's really great for when I do other people's makeup because there's so much variety in this palette. But I feel like having the So Jaded palette, I don't need this palette. I don't need the Morphe palette. And I would much rather support Kathleen Lights and Colourpop than Morphe and Jaclyn Hill, to be honest with you. And I feel like there's just so many people that could get more use out of this than I can and have. Now, trust me, I've done my damage to this palette, but it just sits in my collection. And I think I held on to it kind of for like, how do you say that? Nostalgia? I think I held on to it just to like hold on to it, but I just don't need it. It's filthy, but I'm still sure that somebody will want it and get use out of it, so I'm going to declutter it. We have the Violet Voss Berry Burst Fun Size palette. This is probably my favorite palette to travel with. It's kind of disgusting because I'm sure my kids got into it. I love Violet Voss's shadows, and for me this is great because it has all these neutrals and then you get like your nice berries, and it's so tiny that I can just slip it into a makeup bag or into my backpack. The shimmers are a little delicate, but they're absolutely beautiful. They last so long on the eyes. The mattes blend beautifully. So I'm definitely going to hold on to this palette. And the Violet Voss hashtag palette. This is basically a warm tone neutral palette with some purple. And I really do love the quality of the shadows in this palette. The shimmers are really beautiful. The mattes blend really beautiful. I get some amazing eye looks out of this palette, but I just never use it ever. And I don't know if I never use it because I'm so overwhelmed by all the other palettes that I have in my collection, or if it's just because I'm not drawn to it or whatever. I think I'm going to hold on to it and see, now that I've decluttered so much, if I reach for it. And then when we declutter next time, I will revisit whether or not I'm going to keep this. But I really do love Violet Voss shadows. 3 more palettes left, guys. If you are still here, leave a little alien emoji in the comments. I'm really curious to see how many of you lasted this long. So if you guys saw, this palette is new to my collection. This is the e.l.f. Jkissa to the Rescue palette. This is their second palette that they did. You guys saw the first palette they did together a little bit earlier, which I decluttered. I have some thoughts with this palette. So I was really excited for this palette. It swatches like really decent and everything. Actually, Suki, I think, is my favorite shade, which is this one. I was not impressed with this palette. Like I said, I did a whole eye look with this palette. I tried to film a 3 looks 1 palette video for you guys. I failed miserably because just nothing looked good together. It either looked muddy, or it was patchy, or it just blended to nothing. So I'm so disappointed with this palette. It is $20. It comes with these stickers. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get rid of this, sell this, because I already put stickers on it and stuff, and like used the stickers on here. I don't know, maybe I can give it to my niece. She might like it with the stickers or whatever. I kind of want to hold on to it and like keep trying, but like I feel like I've tried enough at the same time. So I don't know, I might hold on to it and keep trying, and we'll revisit it the next declutter. After I did my first video, I went and watched other people's experiences on YouTube with this palette to see if I was the only one, and I wasn't. So I know it's not just me. I know I didn't just get a dud, and it's really upsetting because I love e.l.f. and I love jkissa, and I really did enjoy their first collab together. And I had high hopes for this, and it just failed me miserably. Last but certainly not least is the Artist Couture Supreme Nudes palette. This palette is a newer palette to me. I did a video testing this out. I will link that down below. I love this palette, okay? Now, I said earlier, I'm not the biggest fan of neutral palettes. I don't wear neutral colors that often, but honestly, the reason why I was able to declutter most of the neutral palettes you just saw me declutter is because I love this palette so much. It is literally the best neutral palette I've ever tried. I love the tones in here. I feel like the color story in here is absolutely beautiful. The shimmers in here are just absolutely perfect. They're not too hard, not too soft, not too crumbly, not too like hard panty. The mattes in here are just the right amount of pigment. They're the perfect tone for me. They blend beautifully. I feel like I could use this on so many different skin tones. I freaking love this palette. Mac Daddy did such a good job with this palette. And honestly, it's not picking up on camera like the exact, maybe that's a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. Why does it look so different from this angle to this angle? I have no idea. But this palette is so good, you guys. I honestly didn't think that I was gonna like this palette as much as I do like it. The packaging is so nice, so sleek, so luxurious. I love that this bends all the way back so you can like look like this, and I'm not worried about snapping it off or my kids getting a hold of it and snapping it. The mirror, I'm sure, is amazing underneath this. I don't know why I'm such a weirdo. I never peel these off. I know people find it so satisfying to peel this little thing off, but I never peel it off. I don't know why. All right, let's see what we kept. I wanted to declutter at least half, so I feel like I did. Let me know in the comments down below if you think I decluttered half. Here is my little stack of what I'm decluttering, and here's my stack of what I'm keeping. So keeping 18, decluttering 17. I'm really proud of myself. I think I did really, really great. Super cutthroat, and I don't think I kept anything really that I'm not excited about, except for maybe a few, but I am keeping in mind that I'm probably going to declutter them the next round if I don't get use out of them and am not happy with them. All right, guys, that is the end of this video. I'm glad that I was able to have the strength to get rid of as much as I'm getting rid of. And before anyone asks what I'm doing with eyeshadow palettes that I declutter, I sell some of them on my Instagram. So if you are not following me on Instagram already, all my information for all my social medias are down below, or I give them away. I have a niece who loves makeup, and my daughter and my son love makeup, so I pass them on, or I pass them along to other people I know that love makeup that would get use out of things that I just don't get use out of anymore. Be on the lookout for more declutter videos coming because it's that time of year, you guys, and my collection is just getting way too big again, and I need to get some of this stuff out of here. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, or you can give it a thumbs down. It's all gravy, baby. At the end of the day, it's all engagement. And don't forget, if you like my vibe, don't forget to subscribe, and I really hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys. Bye. Bye. Am I in frame, Madeline? Can you see my head?
Yes.
My whole head? Am I cut off?
No, you're not cut off.